But let's, of course, start with this big story from the United States of America, where the American President Donald Trump has taken his comments on the American ownership, that is, the Americans taking ownership of the Gaza Strip, and also the future of the Palestinians a step further, stirring a fresh wave of reactions after saying that the Palestinians will not have the right to return to their land and to their homes in the Gaza Strip. Now, Donald Trump is now threatening to halt aid to Egypt and Jordan if they refuse to take in the expelled Palestinians into their nations. Now, the remarks were made in response to a question that was put forth to him. Listen in.
Would you withhold aid to these countries if they don't agree to take in the Palestinians?
Yeah, maybe. Sure. Why not? You mean if they don't agree? If they don't agree, I would conceivably withhold aid, yeah.
Now, the threat came after Egypt, amongst other Arab nations, has outrightly rejected the possibility of accepting the Palestinians once and if they are expelled from their homes in the Gaza Strip. Now, Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati has clarified the country's stance during his meeting with his American counterpart in Washington. The row began when Donald Trump had first talked about only temporarily rehabilitating the Gazans to rebuild the enclave. Later, he said that the Palestinians would not have the right to return to their homes once Donald Trump has built his Riviera of the Middle East. Now, Jordan and Egypt had earlier rejected Donald Trump's plans of relocating the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. The two nations have reiterated their commitment to the importance of a two-state solution for Palestine. But with Trump's latest threat, critical aid for both is now at stake. Now, Jordan and Egypt are major recipients of U.S. military and economic aid. Data reveals that in 2024 alone, Egypt received about $214 million from the United States of America, while Jordan received about $1.3 billion. Now, aid is not the only deal that is on the table. The United States also has some trade relations with Jordan. Both countries entered into a free trade agreement in the year 2000. Now, the United States and Jordan also have a bilateral investment treaty, a science and technology cooperation agreement, and also a memorandum of understanding on nuclear energy cooperation. Later in the day, Donald Trump will, of course, be holding talks with Jordan's King Abdullah. The threat of suspending aid and also the future of the Palestinians is expected to be on the agenda in the upcoming discussions. Question, of course, is to what extent will Donald Trump leverage financial and military aid and trade to pressurize Jordan and Egypt? All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we are being joined by Mr. Daniel Levy, who's the president of the U.S. Middle East Project and a former senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Is joining us on this broadcast. Mr. Levy, this is an idea that Donald Trump has put forth where he says that he wants to redevelop the Gaza Strip, but the Palestinians will not have the right to return. And Egypt and Jordan will have to fall in line with the American president's ideas. Otherwise, they risk losing the aid that they get from the United States. How feasible do you think this idea is, and will Jordan and Egypt accept this kind of a deal?
I think there's a quite short and punchy answer to that, which it is not feasible, and they will not accept those terms. Money is fungible. Accepting hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of displaced people against the interests of your own state, against the mood, against the idea that Palestinians should not be ethnically cleansed. That is not fungible. That's not a thing that you can go to your public and justify. And at the end of the day, that is also extremely costly, well in excess of the amounts you were just mentioning, by which those respective Jordanian and Egyptian economies benefit from their relationship with the US. And the other thing that's very conspicuous here is that the US president has not put on the table either an American military involvement in forcing these people out. He shouldn't do that, let me be clear. But if you want to take it seriously, who's going to force the people out? Who's going to pay for their absorption? So all of this feels like a lot of showmanship for no particular end product.
You know, it's interesting that you're describing it as showmanship. Is Donald Trump also perhaps not aware of the history of this region, where till about 78-80, Egypt was actively hostile with the state of Israel, having actively participated in the wars of 67 and 73. And Jordan has subsequently also went on to normalize relations with the United States. But, you know, putting forth this suggestion that the Palestinians can in fact be moved out of their ancestral lands into Egypt and Jordan, is Donald Trump now creating more enemies for the state of Israel, where Egypt and Jordan could turn hostile? Because the Jordanian king has in fact said this would be tantamount to a declaration of war if the Palestinians are moved out of the Gaza Strip into Jordan.
Look, you raise an incredibly important point here. I don't think there is a program on your or any other channel long enough for us to be able to unpack all the things that the American president is probably unaware of when it comes to the history of this conflict. But on this point specifically, what does this do, first of all, to American national security interests? How could this possibly serve the well-being of the US, advance its interests? The US has many troops in the region. Are they going to be in a better environment in which to operate? Jordan and Egypt at the moment have good relations with the US, have good relations with Israel. These could become frontline resistant states if the US pushes much further. And that crucial issue, what does this do to the ability of Israel to actually be a more secure, permanent fixture in the region? Because everything we've seen in this last 15, 16 months, you know, being watched on social media feeds, on people's handphones across the region, this has made Israel increasingly unabsorbable. And the point I would really like to push home here is when zero-sum outcomes are on the table, when ethnic cleansing is on the table, be very, very careful. Partition is an incredibly painful thing. It doesn't involve the absolute removal, ethnic cleansing of people. The Israeli Jewish community should think long and hard whether it wants these kinds of zero-sum outcomes to be put out there, because these can go in all kinds of different directions. So this is making an already dangerous region even more of a tinderbox.
I think you've summed it up beautifully there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Daniel Levy, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you.